starting. Okay. Need to get the new link.
We'll give them like 5 minutes. I know, like put a 7:30 start, 8 minutes.
This is starting right away.
No, I know, but we'll start like this, the show. Like
Okay,
8 minutes.
Another live podcast.
Do W/, it'll save you words. I'm going to teach you how to tweet.
Go. Tone. This.
Okay, you'll need 23 characters for a live link. You can change the word "and" to an %. That should be enough for a live link. Drop the period. You good? All right. You didn't mention unconfirmed transactions, but that's okay. Let me get the link.
We got instantly 8 viewers. Welcome back. We're just getting set up here, just tweeting it out. If you look on my Twitter account at Droplister or Tones, if you could retweet and send it out, maybe we'll get some more live viewers in here.
Yeah, we're gonna get it going in about 5 minutes. We'll start the podcast.
The topic for this video is specifically this congressional hearing that just happened. I just dropped a link in the chat, but if you didn't see that, we'll catch you up on it. But if you did see that, that's the one I mean specifically. That's not the right link. Yeah, apologize. I'm just dropping some links, getting it out there. And this is a new thing. You know, it might not always be live. You know, but an experiment. So give me. I heard some feedback that the audio is not good, but the audio is from the webcam, and we have audio here that we're going to be doing for the podcast. That will be better later.
Okay. And we got another round of beers. So.
Yeah, we're sponsored by the Brooklyn Brewery.
Yeah, well, we're in Brooklyn, and it's round 3 now.
Yes.
So it's great.
We're loose. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna drop these so I have more bandwidth. Did you put the tweet in?
Yeah, I already see it.
Alright. Let's see. This, by the way, is a Butterfly Labs miner. This is the 30 gigahertz or something like that, or gigahash or whatever. And now it's just a piece of junk. It was good for 3 days. 3 days worth of mining.
Wow, really?
Yeah, 3 days.
Oh,
Well, by the time I finally got it, the difficulty, I mean, it's rocketing. And they had said, they were like, oh yeah, we're going to deliver them. You know they were mining themselves. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, I split a miner with a friend. I think it cost me 1.5 bitcoins. Never delivered. But that's okay. It's only 1.5 bitcoins.
I mean, I was amazed when this thing came. And again, 3 days, and then it just wasn't worth it. Even when the price at the time was like 1,000, you know? And even then, not worth it. I think we're, yeah, I'm ready to go.
2 minutes. You ready to go?
Yeah.
Alright, we can go ahead and
start.
start.
Early. I mean,
Alright. You want to pause?
Yeah, make sure your mic on.
And the battery on? My mic is on.
Okay, cool. So welcome back for the 4th episode of Unconfirmed Transactions. I'm Dan Anderson, and I'm here with...
Tone Vays.
Yet again, he's come back. This is a part 2 almost. And today we're going to be talking about the recent digital currency and blockchain technology congressional hearing. You may have saw it on YouTube. It was streaming. And we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin. We're going to be talking about regulation and if it's possible to regulate and the discussion with regulators should be and where it's at. So let's begin.
All right. Thanks, Dan, or Drop Lister, as everybody knows you by. All right, so we'll kick right into the hearings. So I got an email about these hearings from the Digital Chamber of Commerce about 30 minutes before the start of the hearings, which was great. I mean, sometimes it's good to be on an emailing list. I immediately popped it into a bunch of group chats, and many of us were in the group chat watching it live. There were, I think they got up to like about 150 live viewers for a congressional hearing, which I would think is pretty good. I don't know. I don't normally watch congressional hearings. I don't know about you, Dan. But for me, this was one of the few. Unless it involves Bitcoin, I really don't watch them, though I probably should.
I rarely watch them live. In the chat, and this one was blowing up, but I do check them out. So I watched. So there's a committee called the Homeland Security Committee that I like to watch because they're usually talking about how they're going to spy on people. I remember in 2008 watching the Homeland Security talking about how Lindsey Graham was basically saying, like, I don't believe the Supreme Court would rule that the homeland is not part of the battlefield. And I was at the time studying political science, and I was ranting in these debates about how, like they're going to use drones in the U.S. to surveil people. And I was told, oh, your 1984 worldview is not real. It's not the case. And it just came out recently, the FBI admitted that they've been using drones to surveil on U.S. soil since 2006.
No, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, the answer that I usually get, I know we make fun of it, but people actually give this answer. And their reasoning is, well, what do you have to hide?
Yes.
Have you heard actual friends of yours, relatives of yours say that to you? Well, what do you have to hide?
Everyone says that. I think Edward Snowden has a very simple response to that. If you feel like, for privacy, if you have nothing to hide, why do you need privacy? Okay? Now apply to free speech. If you have nothing to say, why do you need free speech? So like if you just recontextualize it like that, sometimes it can drive it home again for people.
Yeah, no, I never really thought of it that way. But it's a tough stance. And people today, I think it's turning. I really think the tide is turning. People are starting to see privacy a little more seriously, or to take privacy a little more seriously. What were your thoughts on when the Fappening file was released? This is the giant file of a lot of nude celebrities, actresses, singers. When that was released, because they hacked Apple's iCloud, I believe, and they got the photos of all these famous actresses and released all their private nude photos. Well, what were your thoughts on that? What was your reaction to that?
I mean, I wasn't surprised because I knew already how easy it was to hack those things, but, I definitely looked up those photos. I mean, I'm an American. I like celebrities. I have a friend who told me, like, the thing that makes Americans different is how celebrity focused they are. They know all the actors' names, their backstory. They know all these things. And for him, or in his, I think he was European, he was saying that they less focus on celebrities. But I guess the question is, what did I think about it? I don't know. I looked at those photos. I take other people's privacy for granted. And I think that's people always think it'll be somebody else and not them.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then. So there were a lot of people that came out, and even like privacy advocates, and they came out saying, no, these people deserve their privacy. You shouldn't download those. You shouldn't look at those. So there were people that were trying to convince the public that you should let these people have their private moments, and that you should not download those files and you should not look at it. And what were your thoughts on these people saying that publicly?
I mean, again, I did look at the photos, but people said that. I mean, I just felt like I don't know. I guess social justice warrior or something like I don't know.
I publicly disagreed with those people.
So you looked at the photos.
Honestly, I barely looked at the photos.
Okay. But you wouldn't yell at people for looking at the photos.
I was encouraging people to look at the photos.
Okay.
Even though I wasn't really actively looking at them myself. And there was a reason for that. The reason I was encouraging other people to look at those photos is because the FBI looks at those photos all day long. So does the N.S.A. Those stories have already came out. They had those backdoors. And there are so many stories about the CIA and the FBI and all these government agencies having access to all this stuff, and they're just, showing it to each other at the office.
Right. Look how deeply you can see into these people's lives, but that's also happening to you.
Right. In addition, I was also saying everyone should broadcast these photos because it was Apple's responsibility to keep these photos private. Mm-hmm. People should be allowed to send naked pictures or whatever they want to the people that they want to send them to because there is an inherent trust. And if the person they're sending these pictures to breaks that trust, well, then that's a problem. That's a contract between two consenting adults. But the medium of sending these photos needs to protect the data. And Apple wasn't protecting the data. So to me, the more people saw these photos and the more public this incident became, the more seriously Apple will take its security features. And this happened about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And maybe Apple finally listened.
Yeah, they're coming around. So, But right now, and we're going to talk about this meeting in a second, but right now encryption is a big boogeyman in government. So can we have a backdoor to encryption, blah, blah, blah. So, at the very foundation of Bitcoin, it's essential that you have strong cryptography. Unbreakable cryptography is like the basis of one of the bases that makes Bitcoin work. And these hearings, which may seem mundane, may seem esoteric often, like a lot of times what you see in these meetings is what you'll see years later into policy. Yeah. And that's why they're important.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get into the hearings in a second. I don't know if you want to keep this conversation going about encryption and privacy a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just had a thought that might have jumped out. So back to this, the Apple case. Right. Oh, you talking about encryption. Yeah, so Obama slipped up. Did you? Oh man, we should get that clip. Man, maybe we'll put that clip in the show notes.
We'll have to drop it in.
I don't know if you want to.
Everyone's heard it at this point, though. If you're following Bitcoin.
Yeah, everyone has heard it, but it would be nice to play the actual clip. I mean, I know our friends that have a podcast. They have a rule: no live math on the show.
Right.
I think no live Googling to play videos on the show is probably also not a good idea. But Obama was speaking about encryption, and him, like any other politician, is critical of it, and he was talking about all the bad things encryption will do. And at the end, he said, he didn't mention the word Bitcoin, but he said, well, it's like everyone walking around with a Swiss bank account in their pocket. Which is a terrible analogy.
We shouldn't fetishize our phones. That's what he said. We shouldn't fetishize our phones.
I actually heard of the Swiss bank account thing.
It was both.
They
were both part of it.
Oh, okay. So I heard him say like people walking around with Swiss bank accounts in their phones, which I think is a terrible analogy because there are no more private Swiss bank accounts. They gave that up. The U.S. called them and said we want the data, and they said how fast do you want it?
Yeah, if there's a Swiss bank account, they can get in there real quick.
Yeah. So what you can have in your phone is way more secure and private than a Swiss bank account, and that's what these hearings were on.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. And it's also kind of, it was like at South by Southwest or something. Like that's where he's making these statements. So I guess he's pleading with the youth to not encrypt.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting development because they realize it. Look, for me, the only thing that matters, even more than freedom of speech, is freedom of financial privacy. Because you can speak with your money. If you have full access to your money, you can say whatever you want with it. You can donate it to who you like. if you have enough money that nobody can touch, you can I don't know, become a podcaster. You kind of need some. It's hard to be just a podcaster, especially if it's your full-time job. You need money. I think I think you get a lot of your freedom of speech with money. This is why sometimes people demonize the rich, because the rich have the ability to say what they want and the means for other people to hear it. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Well, the interesting thing that I like about Bitcoin and this financial privacy, but also almost like financial sovereignty. So like, and I am not a libertarian, but I usually bash on libertarians, but there's something about Bitcoin where, you know, they have to demonize it as being like for terrorists and for like violent, scary people, but all you're relying on is just math and really large numbers that can't be cracked. And so you can bring your army at me, but like I cannot, like, you won't break through my defenses necessarily, right? And so it's like almost this ultra non-violent but ultra effective defense against like really violent and very powerful adversaries, i.e. the state. And they want you to worry about terrorists and these small groups who are statistically insignificant and ignore the fact that like they're the 800-pound gorilla that really matters.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And again, it comes down to financial privacy. I mean, they demonize terrorist organizations, and that's a key word for me. There's like certain keywords that I just listen to in presentations and conversations. And there are certain keywords I hear, and after that word happens, I'm like everything changes. Like I'm in a lot of these privacy debates, and I just wait. Okay, how long will it take for someone to say the word child porn?
Trigger warning.
Yeah. And how long will it take for someone to say the word terrorist?
Trigger warning.
And the word terrorist, it bothers me when it's used in context, because the context is hard. And when especially a person of authority uses it, and I get to ask a question to the speaker, I always say, "Can you please define what a terrorist is?" Because it's not an easy answer. So and they're throwing these words out there, and I want a definition. I want their definition, and I want the real definition, because you know what? It usually boils down to, well, people we don't like.
Yeah, it's who they say it is.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always who they say it is.
Yeah.
And they like it to find that way. And I don't mean they, like it's Brito, I just mean the state, you know.
Right. Because the state, they need these people to have their jobs. Like the more inefficient things are, the more they're needed. So they're employed because of these tactics. They're employed because of the things that they've deemed illegal. Mm-hmm. If they legalize a lot of the mutually beneficial arrangements between two adults, at least half the government will probably be unemployed. Mm-hmm. My guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, sometimes when people talk about the state, I don't like to talk about the state so much. I like to talk about, for me, this is like, again, off topic. We're getting into more other areas, but for me, the state is just like a protection racket. If you didn't have the state, you'd have a different protection racket. And the state, basically, they monopolize the violence so they can sell you safety.
Right.
You know, it's just a market force or something like that.
All right, so let's jump into the hearings. Yes. We're already 20 minutes in here. All right, so the hearings took place, was this yesterday?
Yeah, this was yesterday. This took place on March 16th, 2016.
Yeah, March 16th, 2016. There were Senate hearings. There were 6 people testifying to Congress, and these are Bitcoin experts in one way or another. Some of them questionably Bitcoin experts, but these were the people that were selected to testify to a committee, and it was. The senators really did not do any research. That's what it felt like to me. They were really just depending on these people to tell them what Bitcoin is and where it's going and digital currencies in general and this whole thing with the blockchain. And they really just depend on these speakers coming in, which is a bit unfortunate because you don't know who's coming in. You don't really know how knowledgeable these people are. And my experience has always been watching several hearings like this but they've all been in the Bitcoin space because that's my interest these days. And I'm like, wow, are these the types of people they bring in for other things that they make laws on? It's really interesting to me. I don't know what your thoughts are.
The usual hearing will pull in maybe agency-specific people. So, like, the Congress has all these agencies in the government, and they bring in, like, the agency head to kind of, like, talk about things. Maybe they'll have some industry people, but this was almost exclusively an industry panel, which is a little unique, I think. Maybe not. Maybe someone in the chat will tell me otherwise. Hey, Paul, I'm going to edit this out for the podcast, but Paul said specifically something about how violence is probably inefficient because of all the death, but you know, you need to have a certain level of centralization and monopolization of violence to have things like wars projected across, you know, thousands of miles, large supply lines, nuclear weapons, et cetera, So if we didn't have that thing, we might not have that level of violence possible. Anyways, sorry. I like Paul Storch a lot. I like to one-on-one with him.
I'm still thinking about the concept. So wars are inefficient because of all of that?
I don't know what his point is specifically, and maybe he'll shine back in later.
Yeah, he had to shine back in because just because there was, I'm not sure if things are inefficient because there is death, right? I mean, death is a natural thing. Everybody dies.
Sure.
So I'm not sure death creates inefficiency.
The thing for me is that there's very few states on this planet for which it's profitable and even possible to have interstate war. There's there's a lot of states where that's not even possible. There are few states in the world where they can even have that level of
right. Well, again, it's not really possible for the United States of America to have a war with Russia or a war with China. It's just not possible there because of nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So we have proxy wars like Ukraine.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point.
So we can't have a full blown out war with Russia. It's not possible because of nukes.
So Paul, I'm going to get back at you. I'm not an anarchist. I am an anarcho-militarist. Anyways, let's get into this though. So there is this discussion in Congress. They bring forward these possibly Bitcoin experts, and they're talking to the government about how they should think about Bitcoin. And what did they have to say? So we have Brito was one of them.
Yeah, Jerry Brito kicked off with this introduction explaining to Congress what Bitcoin is. And I thought he did a really great job at that. I'm very critical. That's the thing with me and Jerry Brito. We only met briefly once at the Miami Bitcoin conference. I've read and heard some of his early work from like 2012, 13.
He's great in those. I've seen those too.
Yeah, it was very good. But then he starts this organization called Coin Center, which I am incredibly critical of.
It's based in D.C., I believe, right?
Probably. Closest to government. Probably based in D.C. And I'll explain why I'm very critical of it. Because they thought themselves as pioneers in creating the California bit license. Mm-hmm. So everyone agreed that the New York bit license was too much and it was too restrictive. That was the general consensus within the blockchain Bitcoin space. So they set out to make a better one in California. And people that are listening to this can Google it. So they did one thing in that license that they're like, well, the intermediaries that are holding Bitcoins with multi-sig. So they changed a few words to make it a little less restrictive. But they were pushing for this bit license in California with their language. And they got into an argument with the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which has been fighting to keep the government out of the internet for the last 20 years. So EFF got involved and they said, no, this license is terrible. It shouldn't even exist. Bitcoin should be free to do whatever it needs to do. It's way too early for regulation. That's what the EFF said.
My suspicion with the Coin Center and is it Jason Brito? Is that his first name? Jeffrey?
Or was Jerry? Or was Jerry?
I'm sorry, Jerry Brito.
I think.
We've been drinking. This is
we have been drinking.
My suspicion with him, because I have seen his early videos where he's like a privacy advocate. He knows that it's good for regulatory arbitrage. My suspicion is that maybe he thinks regulation is inevitable, and he thinks that a proactive role to shape it is good.
He does think that.
That seems to be what he's.
Do you think that's good?
No, I don't think that. I don't think we should. I think there was a great talk at the MIT conference where this one guy was talking about how he started up an ISP in the early 90s, one of the first ones where he was from, and how he's gone through this whole long history of scaling and how we always have these issues. But his point was, stop talking about Bitcoin governance. You don't want Bitcoin governance. Everyone's interested in governance, and they think the problem is Bitcoin is the governance. And they're like, oh, BitShare has governance. Let's have governance. So we can't get it because we don't have governance. Stop talking about governance. And his suggestion was we need to talk about the health of the ecosystem of Bitcoin. Just like, how is this network working versus like, how are we going to govern this thing?
Right. No, I agree with that. And what happened with the EFF, just to finish the story real quick. So the EFF was arguing we shouldn't even have this license. And they were really, or what's the right word I'm looking for here? Kind of aggressive towards the EFF, telling them, well, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about.
Coin Center was telling them that.
Right. So
the EFF?
Yes.
Okay.
They were telling
they don't know what they're doing. Okay.
They were basically telling, Jerry Brito wasn't the one saying this. Right. There were other people there. They were basically kind of telling them to butt out. And they were like, no, this is a good thing that's happening.
The EFF is a really high-quality organization.
I know. So the end result is some congresswoman, local government, public servant, decided to veto the bill and not even veto it for like a year so that it doesn't even go up for vote. And then Coin Center comes out saying they were disappointed in that happening. Mm-hmm. And again, they start arguing with the EFF. This is all in articles. CoinDesk had a bunch of articles on this. And I remember I was being so frustrated. This is what it says to me. That some government bureaucrat, and I don't respect almost any of them, understands like technology and privacy and kind of financial freedom more than you people at Coin Center, which are supposed to fight for Bitcoin. So I was very critical of that incident. And this incident happened in August of this past year. So anybody can go look it up, Google it. Maybe we'll, throw some articles if we do some research. But this is exactly what happened. And ever since then, I've been very critical of this organization. And what happened in Miami, Brito gives his presentation. And in that presentation, the word money laundering is coming up all the time. It's like he's working on a way to help Bitcoin with compliance with money laundering. So as this conversation came to an end, there was time for one question, and I made sure my hand was up early so that I was the one question that got to be asked. And the question I gave to him was, so do you personally think that money laundering is a crime? Because that is a question I like to ask to a lot of people. What is your opinion? Do you think money laundering is a crime? And he did not want to answer that question. He repeated it like 3 times. He tried to get around it, and I can repeat it. It's a very simple question. Do you personally, not your organization, not what you think, not what you think the law is, do you personally believe that money laundering is a crime? Because I wanted to hear what he thought. Now, his answer was, no, I don't believe money laundering should be a crime, which is the right answer. Money laundering is a made-up crime by the government because they want our tax money. Anything else is pure propaganda, in my opinion. That's the only reason why this law exists, also so they can arrest whoever they like on the premise of money laundering. But so Jerry Brewer believes that money laundering is not a crime, but he has an organization that will help Bitcoin comply with money laundering. And to me, that's a contradiction. And I don't like contradictions. So what I told him to do in front of a live audience is to shut down his organization and go fight the money laundering laws, because it will do a lot more good. And his answer to that was, no, that's too difficult.
No one wants to be told to go home.
Right.
So that was one of the speakers. There's a guy here from IBM. I see Paul Snow's here. I'm not familiar with all these people on the board, to be honest.
Do we want to talk about Paul Snow? I don't think he belonged on that in that group. I know he's doing Factum. I haven't been very critical of Factum. Others have. I kind of just let it be. I have to be critical of Factum by default because they created a token.
Yeah, okay.
That you have to buy. That they created out of thin air. I'm not sure how Counterparty works. One day, I know I hang out with Counterparty people. I never asked them how it worked. I gotta ask them about that token. I don't want to be too critical because I don't know if they pre-mined it. I don't think they have. I think you just buy it with Bitcoin and Bitcoin disappears.
There was a period of time, so I didn't want to talk about Counterparty today, but I'll talk about it. So there was basically they announced a burn. So if you sent to a burn address is an address for which you can prove there's no private key. So if you would send 1 Bitcoin to that address, you would have a Counterparty or XCP assigned to your sending address. And that is how they distributed it through what's called a burn. So the 2000 BTC basically disappeared. No one has.
Okay, so you're basically just converting your Bitcoin into XCP, right, but no one is keeping your Bitcoin.
Some people say maybe it's like a one-way peg, but no one has custody of those funds. Because it's a regulatory arbitrage.
I guess that's the one token I can't really complain too much about.
It's a regulatory arbitrage play. They made it an open source project. There is no corporation behind it, and no one received the funds.
Right. So I can't. So
I'm not clever.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because it's fair.
I would not recommend, like there is some price action right now happening in XP. I would not, I'm not trying to pump it or talk, it's just a technical understanding of what happened.
But I have to be critical of the factoids, just like I am critical of the older reputation points, just like I am critical of the Ethereum token.
You have to justify the existence of your token, and if the only reason you have a token is to raise funds, very skeptical.
Right, but again, now we're getting off the topic of the Senate hearings. So Paul Snow, the reason it came up is because Paul Snow was one of the participants, and if you go back and hear his testimony, he got. I mean, you really have to break this down to the basics for these politicians, and all of them looked like they were in their 50s and 60s.
Yeah, at one point one guy said, I was hoping today to find out who's faced on a Bitcoin. I think that's a Congressional joke, less than him showing his ignorance, but he's still ignorant.
That part I
think that was a Congressional joke, but that's the level of people we're dealing with here who, it's like their comparison is physical coins.
Yeah, I mean
this is the most abstract form of money I've ever seen.
I kind of ignored that part. I mean, the IBM guy was there. They're all talking about Hyperledger now that they kind of have it, and also all these blockchains are going to solve all our problems. And he doesn't believe in Bitcoin being very important. There was one of the lawyers there, and Matthew Rozak, who I actually respect in this space. He's a VC. He understands what Bitcoin is. So it was nice to see him there. And he didn't disappoint, but he also didn't shine, in my opinion. He didn't tell him what Bitcoin really is. And my general takeaway from those hearings was they're trying to really sugarcoat Bitcoin and the blockchain. And only a few of them kind of believe that Bitcoin is the only blockchain that matters. But even if they're really trying to sugarcoat it, and they're talking about the future and what it can do and how it's like the internet, but they're not talking about the nitty-gritty of Bitcoin and its main use, which is borderless, permissionless value transfer.
It's really hard to go in front of Congress and tell them that Bitcoin's good for getting around their laws. Yeah, it's hard to say that in front of Congress.
It is. It's really difficult, and I don't think they'll ever have anybody testify in front of them that will tell them how it is. But to play devil's advocate, I think 90% of the Bitcoin community doesn't want anyone to sit in front of Congress and tell them how it is.
I agree. So the thing with Bitcoin is that there's, you know, there's a lot of people with very many different interests, and they're all sort of like looking through the looking glass and seeing different things and seeing where they can involve themselves. For some people, it takes form of like maybe they're a marketer, you know, and their issue is like Bitcoin needs to be rebranded as blockchain, or maybe you're a coder and you go get into that, or you know, people bring their own specialties and their own frameworks to this thing, and then they involve themselves. And there are some people who may be well-meaning, but they're doing things which, you know, the majority of people who use Bitcoin currently, who are maybe like the underlying value, where they're like doing these retail transactions and they're doing this regulatory arbitrage play a lot. So they're generating a lot of that value because they're moving in and out and always having to buy Bitcoin and sell Bitcoin. And those people, again, who are generating a lot of that value, there is a lot of speculative value, and people are holding as well. But then you have these people who they think if we could just get rid of that activity, Bitcoin would be great. But if you get rid of that activity, what have you created besides like Visa again or Bank of America again?
Right. Bitcoin becomes useless. I've been saying for a while, the financial industry has had the technology for 10 to 20 years to make instant, cheap, irreversible payments. They, A, don't want to do it, and B, they can't do it because of regulation. And this brings us right into this topic, is that in around the middle of the hearings, I think it was a representative from Illinois, and I don't want to pick on age, but she was probably in her late 50s into 60s. And one of her questions was specific to chargebacks. So she asked the panel, well, what about consumer protection? Because they're all scared that consumers aren't being protected, and it's the government laws that are keeping them protected. So the question she asked to the panel was, well, what consumer protections are there when you use Bitcoin? Like with a credit card, you are protected on your purchases because if you buy something, you can always dispute the charge and you can get it back. And she was wondering what kind of consumer protections there are in the Bitcoin space. So I asked this question to you, Dan. If you were sitting on that panel, how would you answer this question?
Well, I guess I would talk about the difference between a credit card and Bitcoin is that a credit card is a pull. So when you give somebody your credit card information, they can pull your money from you. And that's really why you need chargebacks, is if somebody goes and takes your credit card and starts pulling money from you. And if you buy a product and then you like want to charge back because you don't like that product, I don't think that's a consumer protection as much as that is like consumer benefit or something. It hurts people that sell things. The real protection you need is when people go and take your funds and pull them because you give them your private keys when you give them your credit card information. And with Bitcoin, you push funds, and you could, by doing that, you're like consenting of here is the money, there you go. And if the person you're pushing your Bitcoin to, you know, maybe they don't deliver, or you don't like what they do, if you know who they are, and you may not, but in the cases where you do know who they are, like there's solutions to that, just through the legal framework. But anyways, that's.
Well, let me ask you another question, right? So how
were you thinking?
Yeah, I was thinking yes, but I was gonna just go right into the examples. But let me ask you another question: how often have you had to deal with a credit card company to reverse a transaction, to get money to reverse a transaction?
Personally, I have never reversed a transaction. The only time I have problems is when Target gets hacked and they tell me I need to have a new credit card, or the problem is like I decided that like, oh, I do something crazy, like go to a different state and make a new transaction.
Yes.
And
they all of a sudden your credit card's declined.
And then they call me up telling me how they're gonna protect me when like they're right in my fucking way. Like one time I was in the Bahamas, okay? I went on a trip to the Bahamas, and I don't have any resources in the Bahamas. I'm on a trip, I'm on vacation, and I was drunk as a skunk. And I needed money to get a cab home. So I go to an ATM, try to get my money out, and my card's declined. My card's locked up.
Because you didn't tell him you were traveling.
Because I didn't tell him. Because I didn't let him know. So I have to have a phone call with this guy and pleading for access to my money. Because they were helping me. by stranding me.
Yeah, well, that's one terrible situation. But have you ever, like, has your credit card ever been used like that wasn't you?
No.
It never happened to you.
I'm maybe smarter than the average bear.
It happens to me all the time. It's happened to me like in the last 10 years, I would say at least 20 times I've had to deal with a charge that I did not make, that I had to get reversed, and I had to get new credit cards.
You know what's probably happening? It's probably happening to me, but I'm probably not seeing it.
Perhaps. But how has it ever happened to you where you had to call the credit card company and dispute something that you've actually made, but you got scammed by the private industry and you needed to get your money back? Have you ever had to do that?
Okay, sorry.
I can't remember that.
Okay.
Okay. I cannot remember an instance where I had to fight with. I mean, I've done stupid things like, let gym memberships go longer than I should. And I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. They keep charging me. But I'm not going to dispute that. That's my fault.
Yeah, the point is, it's when people get access to your funds you don't want, then it's an issue. And with Bitcoin, the only way they're going to get access to your funds when you don't want them to is if they maybe get your private keys or something.
Right. And also, whenever I have a dispute with a private company that didn't send me the right product or send me a bad product, I contact the company. And you know what? Unless it's some shady company, they will fix it.
Absolutely.
And the example that was given there to Congress was somebody's friend was buying some kind of chips, but they decided to buy it through Alibaba, through China, and the seller promised them that they were the original chips from the manufacturer, and they weren't, as he found out when he attached them to what he was doing, and then he had to, argue to get his money back. And I'm like, well, then stop buying cheap stuff from China.
Yeah. Well, I think consumer protection in this context, when it comes up from Congress, I think it's probably like the credit card industry probably tells Congress, feeds them this kind of terminology because the government can be really easily sold on protecting people.
Right.
But it doesn't. It's like almost like a meaningless thing.
Right. But they're scared of the wrong thing.
Yeah.
The fact that in my 10-year history, there's been at least 20 instances of the credit card being used without my knowledge. Meanwhile, I can't think of a single instance where I had to dispute something that I actually bought. And they're still scared of that, but they don't realize that if you are on something like a Bitcoin system for payments, even though that's not even in the top 10 use cases of Bitcoin, the entire concept of credit card fraud just disappears.
And if you are concerned with stuff like that and you do want chargebacks, I could see some sort of insurance industry popping up there where
absolutely.
Maybe, right? I mean,
well, not to mention,
there's going to be somebody willing to take a fee to back those.
I'll take it one step further. I'll take it that if we are to move to a Bitcoin system, there's no reason why a Bitcoin wallet can't integrate a pull system instead of a push system, where you have, let's say, 2 wallets on your mycelium, or 2 wallets or like a wallet on your Airbits, that is allowed to be a pull from.
Yeah.
And then you just keep an eye on this account. You get a text message every time it's pulled, and you provide, details to certain entities to pull from, and you can be notified, let's say, a day in advance.
Yeah.
I will be pulling $60 in Bitcoin from the following wallet of yours. Please make sure it has enough funds.
I'm not sure specifically, but I think payment channels and Lightning Network might be addressing some of that stuff. But I could see this is basically like you'd have cold storage, you'd have your hot funds, and then you'd have your very, very hot funds, which are the pullable funds.
Right.
But you would have, you'd have like a savings, a checking, and this other thing where you can pull from, or your credit card, basically. That's basically your credit card.
Right. But again, right, you can also again, we're talking about this is the real innovation that could come. So these are the types of projects that I would like to see in Bitcoin, and not but with the Bitcoin business. What I would like to see is something, you get a text message, and everyone can get a text message. and it says, I need to pull $60 from your account. Please hit yes to OK. And if you hit yes, your gym pulls $60 worth of Bitcoin from your wallet.
Don't allow Congress here to have these like concerns, which may be unfounded or solvable technologically, prevent this technology from developing at a rapid pace. As government comes in, and we waste our time trying to talk to government, negotiate with the government, and the Bitcoin was the New York City Bitcoin license good for Bitcoin? What happened when that happened? A bunch of companies just bailed.
I honestly think it was irrelevant for Bitcoin.
Well, the companies there was we live in New York, but there's a lot of websites we'll go to, and they'll just stop me and they'll say, no, you cannot be. You're not a customer we want.
Yeah, but if it's something important, I mean, we're smart enough to know how to get around the IP tracking.
Yeah. Okay.
But I just don't do anything that important. Oh, I would love to use Tor. I don't use Tor because I don't go to any websites that I need to use Tor for. And Tor is way too slow for regular searches. Mm-hmm. It just is. I would love to use Tor and mask my web browsing for general usage, but it's so slow for general usage. It's useful for things where you really have to mask your identity, but because I personally don't go to any of those websites, as much as I want to use Tor and create privacy for myself, I don't. It's just not fast enough.
You should know, Tone, and our listeners should know. There's a white paper. I'll put it out. Basically, it's a research paper that describes an attack on the Tor network, which is very bad for Bitcoin users. So there are, I think at any given time, there's only 10 or 20 Bitcoin nodes on the Tor network. That's a very small number.
Yeah.
And in Bitcoin, if your node tries to broadcast 100 malformed transactions, it gets temporarily banned from the network. That's a built-in thing to the code. And there's an attack which can be performed, which you basically broadcast transactions to these other nodes to get them banned so that all Tor transactions in Bitcoin are routed through your nodes. And it becomes very easy to de-anonymize transactions at that point. It's not a problem as long as you know that attack is occurring and there's an alert bell, but you should know that there are not that many Tor-connected Bitcoin nodes, and you can maliciously attack it to de-anonymize it.
I don't even know how to connect the Bitcoin node to Tor.
I know, so I'm just saying, people have assumptions about the privacy, but you need to know that there's a question of, is Tor and Bitcoin, are they together very good friends? And they may, at this point, not be. Just because there are so few Bitcoin nodes on Tor. And you can shut down the ones you don't want and be the only ones online, and you can watch all the transactions coming through.
Yeah, I think there will be improvements in something like Tor. I think we need something that's good.
I don't think it's fatal. I think it's important to know.
I think we should play this clip. So this was the very end of the hearings. And the senator said something that most people did not pick up. But we'll play it for you, and we'll put the video of the entire Senate hearings in the show notes for everyone. But here, listen to what the senator had to say.
This is at 2 hours and 10 minutes in the video, but we will drop the link in. I'm playing it right now. I'm close to the TV. This is the one I can pick it up, and I'm gonna edit that.
Since the observation was made that someone in the dorm room right now may be working on that, whatever that next technology is, I'll just offer that at some point in the future to have my individual medical records only accessible by me, but the larger the identified data available to researchers, FDA, whoever wants to study the cross-hybridization between this medication and cardiovascular disease. The Vioxx story from several years ago might have been very, very apparent had that capability been available. I want to thank all of you.
So I'll edit it in later, but basically he said, I want my medical information private to me, but I'd also like a sort of more anonymized but generalized information available to researchers. Is that kind of the gist of his point?
Yeah, it was. So that was Mr. Burgess. He was the senator, I believe he was a senator or congressman, I'm not sure, House of Representatives. So what he said was he would love a future where all the his personal medical records and whatever drugs he takes, or whatever other his medical history, he wants that to be private when it relates to him. But his medical, but the drugs that he takes or his medical history are not without his name attached to it. He wants that to be public, so that researchers can use it and perhaps save the or prolong the life of someone like him, and make sure that the drugs don't interact badly with other drugs and things like that. So he understands what privacy is in the world of medicine because that relates to him. What I wish this congressman and all of them understood that that exact principle needs to apply to money. Your money should be only accessed by you, and you should be the only one that knows how much money you have. Meanwhile, that same money, how it interacts with the global economy, that should be public, so that researchers and policymakers can better, create a better world for everyone knowing how money flows, without knowing how each individual is actually spending that money. And this is what I would love for politicians and people in general to understand, that just how you think of your medical records and medical history, that's how you need to treat money. But governments will never ever see it that way because their survival is taxes and they think everyone is a tax cheat. So they need to know exactly how much money you have and what you're doing with it, while they don't tell you what they're doing with it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see all public taxes and all public salaries public on the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, all the private citizens have privacy in all their spending and their wealth.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, it's important to have, in my mind, fungibility is really important, privacy is really important. But if you have strong privacy for individuals, and then you have the government on the blockchain doing their money transactions with Bitcoin, and they say, look, these are our accounts, and you can because what de-anonymizes Bitcoin, one, is if you can be associated with the address. So if the government says these are our addresses, you can look at them, that's great. But it is important for individuals to know that right now Bitcoin is pseudo-anonymous, but you can do a lot of things with correlation, and you can guess a lot of things about somebody's usage that kind of may de-anonymize you. Bitcoin is not at the privacy level it should be yet.
Yeah, Bitcoin is a tricky one, right? Because
I see what you're saying. I'm just saying it's not at that level yet where you can have that.
Right, but Bitcoin flips things on its head. Yes, you are not fully anonymous in your spending with Bitcoin. Governments or organizations that have already popped up, they can zoom in on transactions and they can identify people and they can follow a person. But what they don't have is a general net. So there is no Bitcoin company that serves as the deputy for the financial services. Banks do. So banks have all this general information and they know what everybody's doing. But it takes a lot of effort to zoom in on a transaction in Bitcoin and to identify a person. So to me, Bitcoin is pretty anonymous. Mm-hmm. Even though if they want to get you, they will. And this is the opposite of what's happening in the financial industry now, because they have this blanket. They don't need to zoom in. They find out, you flag. In Bitcoin, it's the opposite. You don't flag. A transaction flags, and then they go and hunt it, and they might get to the person.
You know what may have made me ready for Bitcoin was when I was in high school. I was at my local bank making a withdrawal, doing my whole thing, and I was having a poker game with some buddies, and he worked at that bank, and we were talking about stuff. Like it was known that I had made a nice deal and like I got some money in. And this guy told me stuff about my bank account that I didn't tell him, which tells me he plugged in my name into a local bank, little thing, and he pulled up my accounts by my name. And that is not possible with Bitcoin.
Right, and Bitcoin is the reverse.
But what you do have is that, let's say maybe they don't know who you are. They might know where your funds are coming from, and regardless of who you are, they may blockade those funds on the basis of their source, not your identity.
Right.
And that's a problem as well.
Yeah.
But that becomes a more generalized, less individual specific issue.
Right. But because Bitcoin has flipped it around, there's no developers in government that know how to deal with this yet. They haven't caught up to the technology. Perhaps they will one day, or they will outsource it. But right now, I believe Bitcoin is pretty anonymous, as long as you do it right, as long as you don't buy it from entities with your identity, which is a topic for another day.
There are certain parts of the government, though, that Bitcoin would serve well, and I imagine they're looking at it. But I mean, there are black budgets. There are like known billion-dollar black budgets that exist. So there are people in the government with specialization in.
I'm sure. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm
It's
sure
not a
those
conspiracy
are.
theory
No,
that
I'm
there's a
sure.
black
I'm
budget.
sure they exist.
It's kind of public. It's not a conspiracy, guys. Sorry. Because I am very skeptical. I know people who very often appeal to conspiracy, but like there are agencies with black budgets.
All right. So, anything else you want to say on the Senate hearings? Like the overall takeaway is they're really trying to sugarcoat it, and they're begging the government's permission to kind of not regulate it too much. And that's my takeaway. When the real takeaway, if you listen to some of Milton Friedman's early work, is just ignore the government and build technology that doesn't let them stop you.
I'll drop that in the show notes as well. There's a video of Milton Friedman, and basically he calls out very early that it's the big mistake that Silicon Valley is making right now is basically welcoming regulation. And if you look at what's happening right now with Silicon Valley and Google and Apple and all these big, and Facebook and all these big data stores, is they're dealing with right now being in bed with the government regulation. They're reaping the what they sowed by welcoming it in when Milton Friedman made this video. He called it very early.
Yeah, and when Dan said right now, it meant it was 1999.
1990, yes.
So in 1999, this was before Facebook. Facebook only existed in 2002. That's when it came out. In 1999, Milton Friedman warned. He said Silicon Valley is making a mistake because they're running to government to solve their problems and to give them permission. And he said they're going to regret it. And as Apple learning right now, they're starting to regret it.
He said the money they'll spend on the lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah. He said just resolve your own problems and keep the government out of it. And they didn't listen. And I wish he was around to see Bitcoin. I really do.
So we didn't talk a lot specifically about this, but we did use it as a jump-off point for a lot of good discussion. I think this might be another good hour or so. So let's sign off.
Well, that's because there wasn't much, meat in these Senate hearings. I mean, just go and listen to them yourself. It was just a lot of sugarcoating, and some people said things that were way over the heads of regulators, and other people talked about blockchains and not even mentioned Bitcoin. I didn't think there was much substance to these hearings, but encourage everyone to go listen to them themselves and make an opinion.
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. Talk to you later.
All right, this is Unconfirmed Transactions, signing out. Tone Vays. Thank you for having me on your podcast, Ben.
No problem. Bye-bye. That was fun again. No, I don't know why I was so weird about that in the beginning.
Yeah, well, keep it under an hour. I think that was good.
I thought that was good, too.
All right, another episode done. Keep the live stream going for another minute. I'll be right back. So we got a few sips of the beer.
I see we got 11 viewers. If you want to put some stuff in the chat or chat me, I'll pop into Skype. I'm in the Coin Dojo. I'm on Skype. You want to ask Tone anything specifically? We're no longer podcasting, but I'm sure if you have a question or you want to yell at us or whatever, we can talk. Let me know. I know there's a delay too, but I'm here. We'll be here for a few more minutes, and if no one has anything else to say, that's fine too. No worries. What's my favorite flavor of ice cream? I like cookie dough. I like anything with chocolate and cookie dough. Paul. Hilarious. You're welcome for the content, Bitcoin Eralog. And I hope people take me a little bit more seriously now that I wear a suit and I'm professional. I worry about my image. I don't want people to take me the wrong way.
Yeah, you really caught me by surprise, man. When I met you yesterday, or 2 days ago, you were wearing a Budweiser T-shirt. So
Yeah, I wore a Budweiser T-shirt to the Ethereum conference or the meetup, and I was talking to people from IBM, the New York Fed. They don't care that you wear a Budweiser T-shirt. They care that you're sitting there telling them the real deal. Like you sound like, because there's so many people full of hot air, and people may not know the technology or what you're talking about, but they can tell when you're full of shit, even if they don't know the technology. They can tell. Just you show people that you're a little bit skeptical, and they take you a lot more seriously. So yeah, it looks like just Paul and Bitcoin Eralog want to chit chat. We got Suit plus one. That's it. Yeah, that's all though.
I still got 9 viewers.
Yeah, I'm trying to interact. There's a little delay too. There's a slight delay. Paul said it's also kind of choppy. All right, Doug. I think maybe that'll be it then. Unless you make some last minute requests. Mm-mm.
Yeah, give him a minute.
Yeah.
Because we're on a delay.
Yeah. Oh, I have no idea. Just some things. All right. Anyways.
See you later.